What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another watch list video. Happy Sunday. I hope you all had yourself a great weekend. Um, I played lots of golf this weekend, so that was fun, but I'm ready to get into the week ahead. You're getting a really big gap down here and a nasty flush in your Kospi and your SK Hynix, and even in the NQ. I'm just going to go through my watch, just going to make this video pretty quick. Didn't see a whole lot of stuff that I'm like super obsessed with. There's some nice names, prior leaders that I want to watch maybe on like a gap down tomorrow, but who knows. The Kospi, like I said, you're getting a huge flush right now, right into support. So we'll see if in the morning it'll bounce, but definitely super ugly. I don't know if this thing's getting halted or what, but super nasty, right? And you look at SK Hynix here. If I can show the actual ticker here. There we go. Losing the 50-day on the gap down and also losing that prior low. So we'll see what can happen in the morning, right? You got a pretty big gap here. You could possibly come into support, but this is just absolutely disgusting. Your EWY, same thing, getting a bit gap down. I'll look at the NQ here. Another one where it's like, okay, gapping down. Had a low volume day on Friday, outside bar. Not surprised to kind of see this build a lower high for right now. Maybe hold the 50. That's what I would like to see for sure. We'll see how this opens up in the morning, right? This is just how it's acting now. It could in the next 30 minutes look completely different, but coming into the 50 would be super interesting. You know, a lot of your stuff is SanDisk is getting a gap down. A lot of things are getting a gap down, but overall on Friday, we did have a slight turnaround, I guess you could say, in your breadth, from Thursday, right? It was not the best day, right? Thursday, it kind of looked like maybe breadth was starting to like improve from the prior sessions, and it was. And then Friday was just right back at it, right? 162 stocks down, 90 up. Look at pretty, it's kind of same thing. Not the worst, right? 180 down, 129 up. Just the overall stocks, majority of them going down, fewer going up. So, you know, still a hard penny environment, still hard to get position. I'm still sitting in my SanDisk long from last week, from early last week, and I still think SanDisk looks good. So I'm going to continue to keep an eye on things like that. And I think, yeah, SanDisk is on the list. I'm going to go over that. You got lots of earnings coming up this week. You know, the banks starting it off like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, AEHR reports, ASML, TSM, right? Your semiconductor, GE, Netflix, things like that all report this week. That'll be super interesting to see get earnings week started. And then after that, we'll have more and more and more, right? So going over the markets, right? Got the QQQ in a base still. Obviously, I look at the weekly chart. I think it looks awesome, right? You know, you kind of swept the lows of the inside day or the inside week, and you had a nice bounce. But getting a gap down now, I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing under the 50, right? You got NQ pushing lower. I think XLK also, like the tech weekly chart, looks pretty good. You held the 10 week, which is going to be your 50-day, of course. And not a bad candle, but I wouldn't mind to see a gap down inside week, maybe kind of hold that same level again. You got a gap here, so maybe see us fall into the gap, hold it, possibly slash the 50-day would be interesting. But overall, I don't think that looks too bad. Continuing to look at the futures, right? The dollar still in this flag. I look at the dollar's weekly chart, right? You come out the stage one base, kind of pushing into stage two, 3-week flag here, right? You get an inside week. This looks pretty good to me. So a push above last week's high, and I mean, this thing can, you know, might be able to get going out of this flag. It's already trying to push out, but who knows? It held the 50, or sorry, not the 50, it held the 20-day in a nice way. So that was super interesting. Gold futures, I randomly figured about bringing this up. I just think it looks horrible. You know, it looks like it's building a bear flag. Same thing with silver. But I will say on a lot of the ETFs, as far as like equal weight, I think RSPT. Yeah, RSPT, not a bad weekly chart, right? But you pull back to the 10 week, right, which is going to be your 50-day, same thing again. Just nice consolidations across the board. Continue watching these names as far as the ETFs, like your QQQ and things like that. Continue to watch the indexes in the market build sideways, build bases, right? That's why I got AMD on the list, right? You look at the weekly chart. I mean, this one's kind of wedging higher. Inside week does look pretty good if on a daily chart. So we'll see. It would be nice to see this thing gap down, right? You got a nice gap here. That's definitely going to be an area I'm watching. A flush into the bottom of the gap. If it goes any lower than that in the 50-day slash this gap down here, which I've talked about last week many times, but this big gap that you left from Thursday, I'll watch that area as a washout area to buy this name on a higher low. That'd be super interesting. But overall, you know, it's building sideways. The relative strength is very strong there. ARM, another one where it's like you're coming right back down to the bottom of the range. 3 weeks of just straight down. You had a super nasty down week and then kind of some sort of a bounce right off the 50-day, you know, undercut and rally of it. An inside day, I wouldn't be surprised. Another one where it's like you're gapping down tomorrow. Can we come into this gap? We'll see. That will definitely be a spot I'll watch, but I mean, that aligns up with kind of your left side low. So definitely interesting, but overall still kind of in the base. Don't want to see it lose the 50-day again, or that would be pretty ugly. Dell, Obviously, another big relative strength name. This is a name I really want to continue paying attention to. Alongside AMD, as far as like they've just been holding up so well, super liquid. And some of your biggest leaders and prior leaders that have made massive moves and are just digesting and continue to build their bases. So continue to let the market, as far as the QQQ, build its base. And a lot of these stocks, I will continue to keep an eye on. Dell coming right into the support gap, right into the 20-day. That is a spot where I'd watch for a washout. Speaking of getting a gap down right now, maybe a gap down, slight washout in the morning, and then that's where I'll look for some of those names on a higher low. That would be super interesting, right? Hood, I like the weekly chart here. As far as an inside week, maybe continue to build out here would be interesting. But I don't like that candle on Friday, right? It's pretty much a bearish engulfing. So we'll see how this one acts. Just continuing to build out after getting back above the 200-day and building a real base here would be super interesting. It's too early for me to get positioned in a name like this, but the relative strength has been nice. Although, the QQQ was up on Friday and this name was down. So, Friday was, like I said, that's not my favorite candle, but not a bad weekly chart. Just continue to build out would be super interesting. Intel, another one where it's like you're in a huge base, maybe coming back down to the bottom of the range. You're still below the 50, so it hasn't been the best relative strength kind of name. But a flush into the bottom of this like big support area would be super interesting again for an undercut rally. But another one where it's like, I don't like the gap down off highs and the gap down below the 50-day, and you came into there on Thursday, and that's that was pretty much the high for the day as well as the 50-day, right? That resistance gap was the high, and then you gap down to 2% again on Friday. So maybe a gap down tomorrow and a flush, and if this name can actually act right, maybe I'll be watching that bottom area for an undercut and rally. But besides that, I just don't have too much. This name hasn't been acting the best, but it's still in a big base, so don't want to see it break down out of here. But maybe one ugly close and a rally back through, or you get a gap down tomorrow and it's immediately pushing would be super interesting. LLY, right? Eli Lilly, it's in the right group. This group has still been acting nice, and I also threw on MOH, right? Molina. Although the odds of me trading this setup are extremely low. It is building really nice, building higher lows into a nice little flat pivot inside day on Friday. So just a push above Friday's high would be super interesting. LLY into the 20-day would be nice, but we'll see. An inside day tomorrow I think would be cool to make this a higher low setup. So I'll watch for like a washout in the morning or something, or reclaim a VWAP 627 if it can get low enough. But like on a gap up maybe on this name, I don't know. We'll see though. I'll just have to watch how it opens. But I do like this 20-day for a spot for it to fall into. So if that can happen, that'll be super interesting. Marvell is kind of the same thing where it's like you're trying to build a base and now you're in the very bottom part of it. You're breaking down out of it. Hopefully this name isn't losing the 50-day here in the after hours. Let's see, it's at 229.77. So yeah, it's pretty much just barely losing that 50-day. So that'll be super interesting to see how that acts. But I mean, you got the gap right over here. So this could be a spot right from the earnings gap up, right? An area to pay attention to for sure. But I don't want to just continue to try to catch every single low on a stock that won't stop falling. So definitely something I'll keep an eye on, but not obsessed with. But your first pull to the 50, so it's definitely something I want to pay attention to and not give up on. And you're coming to the bottom of the range, so maybe a bounce, push back into the bottom of the range, get positioned somewhere down here for some super tight risk would be interesting. Sorry, I'll go back to the weekly chart here. You make a big move up and you have a nice pullback on low volume. So it's just a name I want to continue to watch. I feel like a lot of the semiconductor names like Intel, ARM, AMD, except for AMD, obviously been holding up the best. So definitely one of my favorites and one I would really stock. NBIS, right? This group, man, this group's kind of sucked. Your WGMI NeoCloud group, I can't even bring up APLD. It's absolutely destroyed below the 200-day. But NBIS, super nice candle on Friday. I don't mind this at all, right? It is below the 50, and maybe it's pushing the lows of that day. But if not, and you can get an inside day tomorrow, or you can hold up nice and push above a Friday's high / the 50-day. That would be a super interesting spot. Maybe this is trying to build a short-term high or low and push back in. But it's another one where it's like, God, these pullbacks are super steep here. It's like the opposite of a VCP, right? It's just getting bigger, and volume is or volatility is getting bigger and bigger as each pullback goes on. So who knows? Maybe not my favorite sign, but that undercut and rally was absolutely perfect. You rejected the 50, and then you had a pullback candle that got bought up pretty nicely off the gap down. So an inside day tomorrow will be interesting, or just a push above the prior high. I really like the weekly chart, right? Obviously the undercut and rally was nice. Not a bad reversal candle, for the long side. So interesting for sure. NVIDIA is a name I bought on Friday. One of the only things I did on Friday was just buy NVDL. So that was super nice. I'm seeing a lot of people talk shit about the opening range breakout. But I do agree with the fact that, you know, if you have like the higher time frame setup, that's the most important part. You can't just take every 5 minute opening range breakout. Whatever. Don't want to go into that too much, but your Nvidia, you know, you had the 5 minute opening range breakout on Friday. That's where I got positioned. It was some pretty tight risk. I think I was risking like 1.5%. And it made an absolute monster move, right? The mags have been awesome. It held the 200-day, built a higher low off of it, inside day on Thursday, and then a push above the 50 and the prior day high on Friday, which was super interesting, right? If I throw up the mags, you get back above the 50, super nice. And then Meta was another one that made a nice move back above the 200. So this is another one I'll watch maybe for a pullback, but I don't know how I feel about this name. It needs to do a whole lot for me to really like this name. It is absolutely beaten down. Nice weekly chart, nice volume, nice push. But, you know, it did the same thing over here, put an inside week. You thought it was good. Then the market started to roll over or anything, and this name got destroyed. I don't even know, you know, April. Well, I'd have to see. But Peng, you know, nice relative strength. Another one, you know, if you try to chase a breakout, you know, it's going to pull back on you. But I mean, you had a super nice earnings day. You got a gap down here, or you got to pull back right to the top of the base. And not a bad 2-day low volume pullback. So definitely interesting to me. The weekly chart looks pretty strong. But, you know, this name, you know, it's a very high ATR. So you got to be careful with this one. It moves pretty quick. But we'll see. If it's getting a big enough gap down, I will watch into the 20-day, which could also line up with the earnings open. So that'll be an interesting spot. SanDisk, like I said, I own this one from the $1,500 undercut and rally. Still have half of my position. I want to sit with it. It had a super nice day on Friday. Could be trying to build out at like a 2-day flag here. I would say an inside day tomorrow, and like the market breaks down or something, and this name holds up. That would be extreme. This is the relative strength monster, and it has been the relative strength monster, except for the last like week or two. But the whole way up, it was a relative strength monster. Can it do that again? The weekly chart looks absolutely awesome. Super big, you know, long side reversal candle there. So I think it looks super nice. But you got the gap here. So a flush down in the morning, right? Obviously, SanDisk is going to be, I don't know why I'm saying an inside day because, you know, your boats, SanDisk is at, you know, 1,800 and $30, right? So maybe it could be an inside day. So who knows? But you know, a flush back in the 50 slash this little gap that it made from Thursday's gap up would be an interesting spot for me to maybe add onto the position or just watch, or for those that don't own a position to get a position this one. But I debated putting Tesla on the list. You know, I like the weekly chart as far as an inside week. I don't know too much how to feel about this name. It's below the 200. I never put names on the list that are below 200. In fact, I never trade names that are below the 200. So that's why they never end up on my list. But it had a nice bounce on Thursday. And just to me, it looks like it maybe could get back above that 200-day. It's right under the 2021 highs. The monthly chart looks fine. Just maybe a few more days of consolidation to make things a little bit more clear for me. You know, you're still inside that big down day. So this setup failing is still pretty high. So I would like to see it get back above the 200, and then we can decide from there. But overall, you know, the mags has been strong. It's been one of the best groups. If anything's going to take the QQQ higher, I do agree, and I do think that it would be the mags with the way they've been acting. You know, you look at Google, and it's like, okay, inside day on Friday, not my favorite. I flipped the chart, and I don't know. You know, the rejection of the 50 was ugly. It just needs to get back above that, and some of these other ones can start acting better. Amazon, I don't think looks too bad. Another one below the 50. You saw what Nvidia did, though, get back above the 50. This one is trying to build a bottoming base, so who knows, but it did reject the top of that pivot while the rest of the group was super strong. Apple, you know, coming right into the left side peak, looks like it's ready to make a new all-time high, like nothing. But will it fail when it gets there? I don't know. You know, it is pretty stretched in terms of how many days it's been up, and it's just like a straight V. Doesn't mean it can't go higher, but it just means I'm not going to be buying it up here without a real pullback or real tightness. So it will be something I continue to keep an eye on. It's been one of the biggest relative strength names, that mags group, right? So continue to watch it. SMH, I look at a weekly chart, and I do like this weekly chart. This is a potential for a higher low spot. And you're kind of right under a pivot from June 3rd. So you did build a big higher low off the 50. Just, you know, maybe a gap down tomorrow into the 50 and a hold would be super interesting. But I don't want to break the lows of July 7th. So just continue to build out this right side here, and a lot of stuff too. Just continue to build out the right side would be super interesting. WGMI. This name's just, this group has just been crap, right? I like Cypher's weekly chart as far as like an inside week, but is it just an inside week to break down and go lower, or is it actually going to try to bounce off here and maybe WGMI is going to wake up? But like that day on Friday was disgusting, where you get the top wick on Thursday, rejecting the 10 and 20, and then you get a fall through to the downside, losing the 50 days. So not my favorite. WGMI, maybe building a bear flag, or it's turning resistance into support, and it will actually bounce here. And NBIS is what I would focus on. Like I talked about, Jesus Christ, like I talked about as a higher low setup, or as a maybe a move back down into support as like a higher low. Just I'm watching for the higher low on NBIS. But it's back below the 50, so who knows what that can do. But definitely want to focus on the top relative strength names that are already above their 50. Although I do like NBIS, I do like Intel, because they've been big names. They're extremely liquid, right? They're your prior leaders. Can they act a little bit better? Like DRAM, right? Like I talked about SanDisk, right? You could throw MU on there. You're getting the gap down. Obviously, you practically held the 50 there, so it's interesting. I don't mind the weekly charts on these ones. Maybe they need a little bit more sideways to have a little bit more clarity to a setup. BTC, I want to just talk about this quickly. It is breaking down here now, but it's trying to build some sort of flag maybe, or it's just a rejection of 50 and it's going to go lower. I think that's like the odds of it breaking down and going lower are way higher than the odds of it going up, at least above the 50. So, seeing it kind of down here, it's interesting. It had a nice double inside day, but I don't know how I feel. I don't like the weekly chart at all. It's kind of just super low volume. You did have an undercut and rally, which was nice, and then you did absolutely nothing last week, kind of just slowly fading higher, and now you're seeing it slowly roll over. So who knows? Losing the 1020, it's ugly again, which looks like that is bound to happen. Bug. Right, you look at cybersecurity stocks, they did get hit in a nice way, but a lot of stuff needed digestion, right? Your CrowdStrike, FTNT, things like that. It's nice to see them finally digest. That's what we wanted, but that's why I say you don't be buying these ones up here when they're extended, when there's just like Okta's pretty nasty as far as a bearish engulfing. TDOG did have a bearish engulfing. I do like this sideways it's building, so continue to watch this name for a pullback would be super interesting, whether it's in the 20-day, also lines up with the gap, right? Your support gap, like the weekly chart doesn't look too bad, just continuing to build out. This right side here would be super interesting. So, you can throw DDOG on the list, right? It looks good to just continue building out some back burner setups. B-Fly, it is in that right group as far as health technology, right? I think GH is considered health technology. Yeah, it is, right? So same group. GH is a name I own. It's not on the list because of that reason, right? I would like to add this name maybe, but I still have a decent sized position to the point where I just want to let it work, and I think it looks good. And I don't want to get too invested in this healthcare group. TNGX is another one. I was watching this one last week. Not a bad candle today. You get a nice flush to the 20-day. If you're able to pick this one up, nice work. It's I think this is the one where it's not very liquid on the intraday chart. Never mind. I'm thinking about a different one. But not a bad daily setup here. DDOG I talked about. RBRK. All right. Your cybersecurity stuff got hit pretty hard, right? CrowdStrike could have been a DTSS, like on a weekly chart. So, maybe you can see continued fall through to the downside, but into the 20-day will be interesting. See if that spot holds. I'm assuming it does. If it doesn't, I will cut my CrowdStrike. But we'll see. This whole group kind of looks at it. FTNT, makes a new 52-week high, and then kind of flips red. Palo Alto, another one where it's like, watch pull back into the 20. If not, it is what it is. And that's pretty much going to be it. I don't want to leave this video too long because I'm not seeing too much I'm obsessed with, but I'll be super patient to start the week personally. I don't want to jump the gun, do stuff I'm going to regret later in the week and be having to, chase back wrongdoings from earlier in the week. So that's going to be it for me, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have more clarity and some better setups, and we'll figure out what's going on. But earnings week is right ahead, so I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.